We just got back from Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Grubb, and William Image's press conference, and there's a whole lot to talk about. So let's get into it right here on Locked On Huskies.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Back to another edition of Locked On Huskies. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That right there, that is Lars Hanson. We write for Inside the Huskies with Fan Nation and Sports Illustrated. Lars, as always, it's great to have you here with me. We are going to have a really great show today. Ryan Grubb had some very interesting comments at his press conference. For anybody who didn't, watch that press conference live, that's okay. That's what we're here for. That's why you come to Locked On Huskies. And we've got a whole lot to talk about injuries and other things that are going on. But first, quick reminder, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Lars, Ryan Grubb said today that he was asked because that game at Michigan State, obviously, very complete game, especially for the offense. Michael Penix played at an otherworldly level. And when asked, rate this offense on a scale of 1 to 10, Ryan Grubb said 7. And I saw some tweets after the fact of, if that's what a 7 is, I'm truly terrified to know what a 10 for this offense might be.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, as crazy as it does sound that it's a 7 because Michael Penix threw for 473, 4 touchdowns in basically the first half. They really didn't do anything in the second half. I think that first of all, that's part of it. The fact that you didn't finish the game, you got outscored in the second half. They
technically lost the game. Lost the game in the second half.
Right. They had us in the first half is what Michigan State said after the game. But no, and then you added to it the running game. We know they can get more from the running game, the blocking. I think without Julius Buelo, Mateo Mele, unfortunately now his career is over unless he gets
he could apply for a medical redshirt. We'll get to that.
He theoretically could, but also the more you think about that 6th year senior coming back for a 7th, 8th year. I mean, it was enough for Eddie to come back for a 6th year. But I don't necessarily know if Mateo wants to go through all that, knowing you have Parker, you have Landon, you have all those guys. It's just an unfortunate thing for him. But with that being said, I do think that, to quote the staff, there is a little meat on the bone, right? There's still more to do. And I think that's kind of what I would probably say it's an 8, with the running game being a 9. And
I'd give it closer to a 9, especially with number 9 at the helm. I'm sorry. I had to get that in there. I apologize. Please continue.
But no, you're good. But yeah, I think that's what there's obviously reasons why this offense can improve, and the fact that they can improve is what's scary.
I'm almost scared that the number 9 thing went right over your head, but
No, I got it.
I know it was a bad pun, and that's what I wanted to say. I'm sorry. I apologize. I hate those puns as much as the next person for the most part. But no, you're right. And I think that a lot of that, we can talk about the running game where this was the first game we actually saw what the rushing attack can look like. And it's something that, I saw some comments in the YouTube about it. Ryan Grubb has basically said as much, and as has Kalen DeBoer, it's throw the ball as well as we are. Why? Is there really a need to run the football at this point? Which, I mean, I totally agree with that sentiment. And it's, if they can run the ball at will as well as they're throwing the ball, I don't think that's really necessarily possible. But if they can just, even continue to just improve on the run game, where Dylan Johnson looked really good. He still looked like he wasn't even at 100% speed wise, but he looked like exactly the person that you and I have been talking about here and on Inside the Huskies that he possibly could be.
Yeah, and I think we touched on it yesterday where I said he's about 95%, 95%. And I think we kind of saw that where early in the game he had those hard few runs, but then he didn't have that in the second and the third and in the fourth quarter. Again, because they didn't need to. So I think, again, it's more of a caveat of why this offense is a 7, because also part of that answer is they haven't shown their full offense, believe it or not. Like, I guarantee you, Ryan Grubb they're probably it's 70% of the playbook at this point. Like,
I think that's even high.
I think the point I'm matching the 7 with 70 is kind of where I'm going with that. So but there's still 30% of the playbook that is untapped. And with this offense and this receiver core, with a Swiss Army knife like Jack Westover, just able to casually get 3 touchdowns in the red zone, which also solves your red zone problem that you had last year, where it's like, hey, we couldn't punch it in on the ground. Okay, do you want to try and get Dylan to punch it in, or do you want to just get creative with one of the best scheming offensive coordinators in the country? And I think they're answering that every week.
it's just I like every time I go back and I just look at some of the film for this podcast or writing something for Inside the Huskies, whatever it is that we're doing, I'm just baffled in the sense of how is it this good? Like it's truly wild, and a lot of credit needs to go to the talent, and a lot of credit does need to go to Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb, and then of course to Michael Penix. And it's just kind of, and then you hear a comment like that, and you're just like, whoa, there's still more. And I think that's something where I respect the confidence that Ryan Grubb carries with this offense so much, man. It's just like, I feel like it's a breath of fresh air for us personally as people who have to cover that. But then also it's just like, oh man, just you look at the personnel that he has, like we just said, and yeah, I understand why you're so confident in this offense as a whole.
And not to harp on it, but the talent in this room outside of Penix and the 2 running back transfers is the exact same from 2021. They're older. Now they're older. They are. So there is a bit of growth and maturity and things like that and weight and et cetera, et cetera. But the talent is the same.
Right. And, so you can harp on certain people with the initials JD and maybe JA as well. If you really want to dive in there. Or,
who's the JA?
Receivers coach? Yeah, no.
Junior Adams.
Junior Adams,
okay.
Yeah. If you really want to go down that road, and there's something that William Inge said today, where that's kind of why I don't mean to take shots at Junior, but it's just kind of I know what I said. But it kind of shows the gap between the two, right? I think that's the point I really wanted to make here, is because if you just, for anybody who didn't listen to the press conference, William Inge was asked a question about Jamarcus Shepard and just as a wide receivers coach, what he brings to the room. And he just gave a really, really thoughtful answer about not only what he does for these guys on the field, but off the field as well. And that's why they trust him so much. And there's just this level of understanding between him and his players that, just as Inge said, makes them so lucky to have him on their sideline. And it's just, just watching him coach every day too. I understand why he says the things that he does.
Right. And I mean, I remember going back to fall camp asking Jamarcus Shepard, is this the most talented receivers room and the deepest room that you've ever had? And he wanted to give some flowers to the 2015, one of those teams at Western Kentucky that actually they did have a pretty good team, and it was a pretty especially deep receiver core. But it's almost like hockey where you have 3 different line changes you can roll with this receiver room if you really want to.
Right. And
I don't know. I mean, Ohio State, great receiver room, top end more so than anything else. But when Texas, same thing with A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy. But 2 through 6 can be 1 and 2 anywhere else in the country almost. I mean, many other teams?
Even at some of those schools, we can say that.
Yeah, how many other schools would want to have Jalen Polk as their number 1 receiver right now?
Oh, absolutely. Tons.
How many would want to have Jeremy Bernard?
Oh, tons. Even Denzel Boston. And we've talked about this. He can't even get on the field. And we've seen how good he is in practice. It's wild.
And you're also playing without Giles Jackson, who was actually your most sure-handed receiver last year. You didn't have the most catches, didn't have the most yards or touchdowns, but he was the most consistent target. I think he was 30 of 32. And he didn't have I think he had 1 drop or no drops, but he had just 2 incomplete passes that went his way. But he was also a staple, and he's not even playing right now. So it's like, imagine when he gets back into the mix, what he can do, and then we also know how talented the freshmen are going to be down the road.
Right. And that's, these freshmen, and we've seen them in practice. Tayshawn Lyons had a tough drop just on Saturday, but you kind of we saw the flashes from him early on. There's a reason he's on the depth chart, even though Ryan Grubb did admit that it's going to take a lot for him to be able to play. But 41 points is a lot, as I think he would say.
And yet they should have probably had 60, 62.
Yeah. I keep saying this, but it's crazy. We're saying that every single week at this point. It's like, yeah, there's more. There's more. I don't, and this is coming from 2 people who've watched a lot of football in their life. I have never seen anything like this, where it's every week you go and you watch and you just say, wow, that was incredible what just happened. And it felt like it wasn't everything.
I didn't watch it personally. I didn't cover the team, but that 2019 LSU team, 2017 LSU team, which the Burrow-led insanely 2019. Yeah, that 20. I think it's actually somebody had a post on Twitter with the Spider-Man pointing at each other meme where it's like 2019. LSU, 2023 Washington. It really is.
It is.
It really is. From
just like us with the gray on here, you know.
Because here's the thing: it's not just Michael Penix. It's a lot to do with Michael Penix, but it's the offensive line. It's the run game being complementary. It's you also have a tight end, a couple of tight ends who can do a number of things. It's not just Jack Wester. I mean, Josh Cuevas showed that he can go big. Quentin Moore is actually coming along pretty well. Devin Culp is a senior, and he's the fourth guy I mentioned. Not out of disrespect, but just there's so many weapons on this team.
Exactly.
It's like somehow Mason Wheeler was able to get a pass. Like and that is what we're not talking enough about here.
And it's something where I think that you'd be very confident betting on this team every week, and there's no better place to do that than on FanDuel. And it's now that it's football season, you can snap into the action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. And real quick here, something that we looked at it just before the show because like we'd seen it in some places, but the line this week for Cal coming up here to Washington is 21.5. And I think that's going to be something to monitor as the week goes along, and something where this was a pretty tight game last year for other reasons. So if you want to throw a couple bucks on, you know what, I'm not going to say that because I'm a jinx no matter what I say. So I'm going to leave it at that. Now it's time to move on here. We did get some tough injury news earlier. That was really, really sad to see. We referenced Mateo Mele in the opening segment. This day one starting center for this team is out for the season. Ryan Grubb said he had surgery. And Devon Banks, a backup cornerback who played really, really well in the team's first couple of games, is also out for the season. All they said was upper body injury for both. There was no further detail given. But then the other injury is Fatu Tuitele did suit up, but he didn't need to play against Michigan State. And Kalen DeBoer said, yeah, we just didn't need to test him. There was really never a point where we were just like, yeah, why are we going to risk that? So there's that one. And then wrapping up here, Cameron Fabiculanen, Jalen McMillan, and Julius Buelow are all apparently on track to play this weekend, according to the coaching staff. And the only one who is week to week right now is Asa Turner. Kalen DeBoer called him doubtful for this game against Cal, but we'll kind of see where that goes moving forward.
I'm pretty sure Vincent Nunley is going to start again this week because he earned the right to play. Like, that's not a disrespect to Asa Turner, but I think you give him another week, let him kind of get ready for Arizona and then Arizona, Oregon, Stanford, things like that. Because you want him in the meat of the schedule. Because again, as good as Vince was and as good as Cam Fab has been this season, I think Ace's leadership still is kind of something that neither of those guys can replace. So you still want him eligible and healthy, and then maybe if he doesn't play a ton, okay, so be it. But you want him to be able to play is the point.
So I don't think we see him till the Oregon game, mainly because you don't want to test anything against Arizona. It would be great to have that veteran leader against a really quality passing attack that they have down there in Tucson. But there's no need to test that because then also you have the bye week right after that. So it's kind of nice to just say, okay, we'll give you that 3 weeks off to just really heal up, and we'll see you for the game where we're really definitely going to need you.
And then you're right. That's probably that's the best outcome, right? Not the best. Well, I guess the best outcome would be he plays this weekend and things like that. But I think the secondary showed, and again, when you look at who, it's more so against Arizona. I think that it would matter because Arizona's a better passing program than Cal. Let's just call a spade here. Because when you look at Cal, first of all, my thing with Cal, they got 3 really good running backs. Isaiah Onfries, who I think Eastside Catholic, one of the schools in the state of Washington. I know for a fact. I know he's a state of Washington product. Let me just put it that way. And he's also getting a bulk amount of carries and a bulk amount of yards. So they really have a 3-headed attack. It's almost like not to get over the moon here. Cal's running backs and Washington's trio of receivers, it's kind of the same premise, right? Where it's like there's 3 really good running backs, 3 really good receivers. Washington's receiver is better than Cal's running backs, but the talent gap isn't maybe as much as people think.
No, I like that a lot. And especially I think the biggest thing that we have to consider in this is the Huskies, they struggled to just put points on the board last year. And that was a lot of credit needs to go to Justin Wilcox's defense, because it's something that I got to ask Ryan Grubb about that today. And he just gave a lot of credit to that coaching staff. Said, yeah, there are a lot of really experienced guys just on the defense and on the staff, and they just do their jobs really, really well. And they just, it's not, and because I asked, do they throw looks out there that confuse you? He said, no, they're just so disciplined and so good at what they do that it's really, really hard for us to sometimes execute the way we want to, because they're doing exactly what they want.
I agree. My favorite part of that answer, actually, from Grubb, was what you didn't mention, was when you asked him, does it force you guys to change anything? And Ryan Grubb said, no, we're not going to change. We're not, we don't change. Teams change. He didn't say teams change to us, but he said we don't change.
Right.
And I think it's because, going back to the first segment, of the confidence that he has, like, no, we just maybe have to do a little different with personnel and maybe play calling. Not change things up, but kind of maybe do some shifting and things like that, but not any holistic changes. It's like, hey, whoa, they really schemed us good last year, so now we got to plan to scheme against them differently. It's like, no, we're still going to be Washington. We're just going to see what they throw at us this year that was different than last year.
Right. I think that, and it's something that I know we've talked about in previous weeks when we talked about what the running game needs to do to get going. And that's just kind of taking what they give you. And that's actually one of my predictions. I'm sure we'll get into it more later this week. But one of my biggest predictions for this week is Cal is going to just rush 3 guys a whole lot of the time. And because and that's what they did last year. They did that last year a whole lot. And they just kind of were saying, hey, run the ball on us. We dare you. And I think that that's something where Michael Penix could still have 300, 350 yards in this game. But I think that we might see a 100-yard rusher in this game. I think that this is going to be a big week for the Huskies on the ground, because that's what Justin Wilcox wants them to do. And I think that Ryan Grubb is smart enough and confident enough in the offensive line and in his running backs to just say, okay, are they going to give us 6 yards here and 6 yards there? That's fine. We're going to take that.
And the other thing you have to consider too is they can also use their running backs in the pass game and, kind of do it that way. So I think it's a more matter of, I think also, no disrespect last year to the team, but I forgot what the reason was that Richard Newton kind of ended up playing a little bit more of a role, because I think this year the running back room is just a little deeper. I mean, again, I know Cam Davis. My apologies there. My apologies. But Cam Davis not being out or being out this season, and I think he was healthy last season for the game. But the point being that you have a different style of running backs this year. Will Nixon's in the program another year. Sam Adams might be a factor, things like that. So I think there's a plethora of ways they can use the running backs, even if, let's say, Cal does actually stop their run game.
Right. Real quickly here, I do have to remind everybody that college football season is here. And this season, Locked On is kicking up our coverage with Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. Each Friday, Locked On will go live from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel. College Football Kickoff Live will cover playoff implications, conference rivalry games, and go in depth like only Locked On can, including insight and analysis from our stable of Locked On College hosts covering their team every day. Find Locked On College Football Kickoff Live every Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on any Locked On College YouTube channel. You won't want to miss it. Speaking of things that you won't want to miss, I think that Jalen McMillan, not having to miss him for any games, and it sounds like just the fact that he avoided any kind of major injury, is such a huge thing for this team. And it's not, we just spent a whole lot of time talking about how good the rest of this room is and how good just this receiver core as a whole has been, thanks to, Michael Penix, thanks to Jamarcus Shepard, thanks to just the talent that is there, thanks to all those things. But Jalen McMillan is just such a huge piece no matter what. And even if, you have to miss him for a game and it's Jalen Polk and Jordan Bernard who are getting the start, I don't know, it feels like the offense would be a little different without him.
Yeah, but it would, because then if you go back to the game against Tulsa and even Boise State, where he had a lot of yards after catch, and that was kind of one, and you show that a little bit even again, the phantom holding call that wiped away Will Nixon's touchdown, things like that. There's so many ways that he impacts the game. I mean, that was not a hold on Jalen. No, but there's so many other ways, because it's not just about those guys when they catch the ball. It's also who do they take away. I mean, when you look at the touchdown to Jack Webster with the second one, the 13-yarder, that was basically an alley-oop. I forgot, I think it was Roman, somebody else took away the other defenders, so that allowed Westover just to have the wheel route right into the end zone. And so it's like, just because like that's why you want those guys healthy, right? That's why you don't necessarily have to throw to him all the time. I mean, Roden is as good of a dummy as he is as a receiver. Like, and I think that's what makes him such a good receiver. And Jalen is the exact same way, where it's like, hey, we showed that Jalen McMillan can be also a quarterback. So if we move him in motion, now teams have to think, wait, is he going to throw? Is he taking a sweep? Is Jeremy the one taking the sweep? All these different things that Ryan Grubb does is what allows the offense to have success. Because if you're just doing basic motion, which we saw in 2021, teams can snuff that out. It's
right.
It's setup, motion, and execution. That trio is what is allowing Washington to have success.
I think the way Ryan Grubb uses motion is just so much fun to just watch on film too, because it's multiple motions. There's all different kinds, and it's something where you watch them and it's just, yeah, they seem very comfortable running everything that they do out of any formation and in anywhere on the field too. And a lot of that is thanks to the motion and being able to just force miscommunications in the defense, and just all the different things that he just knows exactly how to use it well. When, John Donovan, to again bring up a previous discussion when he was here, it was, all right, this guy is coming across the formation. And it felt like the only thing that was going to do at times was just identify, okay, is it man or is it zone? That was it. That was the only point of motion there.
Right. Whereas now you have Penix, and again, that wasn't a discredit to Dylan Morris, but I think when you have a coaching staff that allows you guys that coaches up the quarterbacks, and Penix is a natural reader, and I think Dylan could read the defense. When you don't have that extra coach and that extra voice in the room to say, hey, let's kind of scheme things correctly, that's what showed.
Right. And, if anyone out there is looking to get tickets to this game on Saturday against Cal, it's going to be a night game. There's going to be that LED light show for the first time, which seems like it might be fun. I'm personally very excited to see what that might be like. I think that there's no better place to go find those tickets than on Game Time, because buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Some of the best parts about Game Time are, the flash deals and the last-minute tickets, and there's the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection. There's so many different things to make sure that you're getting the best deal possible. That's why Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. The Game Time guarantee also means that you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you with 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, I think it's time to get into the secondary here. There's a lot to discuss there. We touched on it briefly, but I know we kind of wanted to save that discussion for this point in the show, because the big thing right now, straight off the top, is Asa Turner. Am I wrong?
I mean, between that and your two highest rated PFF defenders didn't play against Michigan State, and you only held them to 7 points. So, yeah, the combination of all three of those guys not playing, I think, actually makes more of a statement about what the defense did than anything else.
I haven't looked at the grades recently. Jabbar Muhammad is not one of the top two?
No.
That's stunning. Because, Asa's been great. Devon Banks has been awesome. But Jabbar was, the highest graded player on the team after the Tulsa game. Or he was the highest rated defender in the Tulsa game, at the very least. So that's something where, I love watching Asa play. I love watching Devon Banks play, but I think that Jabbar Muhammad has kind of been the biggest part of this secondary. And but the biggest thing about Asa, and the thing that I think is the biggest thing to watch going forward, is the fact that he's the signal caller on the defense, and he's the guy who gets everybody on the back end aligned correctly. And that's kind of where we didn't see a lot of issues against Michigan State. Excuse me. And I think that's really, really huge going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a testament to one thing that I know Ace has done a lot with this room is he's passed on, same thing with the receivers, they passed on that knowledge to the younger guys. Same thing with Jabbar. And so I think when those guys aren't playing, I mean, we touched on it yesterday where I said Jabbar was out of the game for healthy out of the game, because that they're like, okay, hey, let the younger guys cook. Let's see what they can do. You're passing on this knowledge. I mean, that's when William Anderson touched on it, Chuck Morrell, co-defensive coordinator, touched on it a number of times. These older veteran guys are passing that knowledge down. knowledge gets you so far, but then you also have to have game experience and, those live reps on a Saturday when the lights are on to see, okay, can you carry that knowledge onto the field? And I think actually the answer has been yes.
No, they absolutely have. And that's one thing that I've really wanted to like hammer home with this coaching staff. And Juice Brown is somebody that I talked to last week, the cornerbacks coach, and he was really, really complimentary of Jabbar Muhammad and just saying so much of just like, yeah, no, he's done so much to help this defense. There's a lot that, guys are asking him all these questions. Devon Banks credited him for, he's really helped me out in the way that, I've watched film, and he's changed the way I've watched film. So that's a huge part of this. But I think the biggest takeaway from the Michigan State game, at least defensively, was Vince Nunley.
Yeah, and it's funny because I remember I requested him, and a few of us had requested to talk to him in fall camp, which he hadn't played. He's never played, right? He was injured last season, and coming into the season, I remember Morrell saying that he was one of the guys they were really high on, and Vince was like, "I don't want to talk because I haven't done anything yet," and I actually respect that because did something yesterday, a lot. And the thing was, it wasn't just as a pass coverage safety, right? He was coming down in the box. He was making sure tackles. He wasn't missing tackles in the open field, which is kind of what has been the struggle of the secondary over the past 2-3 seasons, where when you get into that third level, guys missing tackles, either a linebacker or safety, and he didn't miss a single one that I saw.
Oh, he didn't. And that's the biggest thing. And going forward, I think that he's going to find himself in the rotation way more often than we've just seen so far early on because of that. And especially, when Oregon comes to town, they love to run the ball, and we're going to see them take some more deep shots, but they love to run the football. They've got some talented running backs who ran all over the Husky defense last year. And a lot of that was because Asa Turner and Alex Cook were just bouncing off of guys. And if Vince is going to be the kind of dude that's coming downhill and just wrapping up and tackling right away, that could really, really change the outcome of that game.
And I think the other part of that is you don't want Dom Hampton being the one to always do it. You kind of want both of your safeties to switch off and have that assignment, because I think one thing this defense has shown, and we've talked about it, you kind of got to play multiple positions. I mean, look how many guys switch positions. Mish went from outside to Husky. Dom went from Husky to safety. There's a Cam can do it all. Cam Fabiculon can do it all at this point. So I think there's the amount of versatility in that secondary is really starting to show in multiple facets of the game.
Right. And that's something where I kind of shift my focus to cornerback a little bit here, just kind of as we move on in this discussion, because I'm going to take a break from my Thaddeus Dixon agenda for the day, because that's something, as the everydayers know, I push my Thaddeus Dixon agenda every chance I can. But now with Devon Banks out for the season, who is going to be the next man up? Is it going to be Javion Green? Is it going to be Darren Barkins? Is it going to be one of the freshmen? What do you think is going to happen at that CB4 slot?
I would say Javion probably gets the first crack at that. I am also intrigued because the coaches have mentioned that Cam Fab can play some cornerback too. So I'm wondering, do they ever decide to slot him out there? And that one would be more against Oregon or USC, where you need a more passing coverage team, and you want to have your best coverage guys going.
We're going to see a lot of dime in those games where there's just going to be 6 defensive backs all over the field.
Yeah, and I think actually that's more or less why I think maybe they're not classified as a cornerback, but that's why you want to have guys that are bigger and that can kind of do more. I mean, Mish he's an outside corner, but he's able to do 3 or 4 different things. So I think that's Cam Fab is in that same mold. And Javion honestly played well last year as a freshman, all things considered. So I think now, a year ahead, I think he's probably going to have the inside track there.
So I want to go back to what you said about Mish, because you're right. He can play outside corner, but I think he is perfect for the Husky position.
Yep.
Because he doesn't, and the thing we saw him struggle with the most last year was getting beat over the top. That was where we saw him struggle more often than not. And that's something where you don't necessarily see those routes a lot out of the slot, unless it's going up the seam, and then you can just pass somebody off to a safety and sit down a little bit in a zone and look for something a little bit more underneath. So that, I think he's really thrived there. We saw him get his first career interception against Michigan State. And I think that he's just perfect in that position, because I saw somebody bring up somewhere where I talked to people about Husky football saying, oh, well, do you think Mish Powell could shift outside? And it's just kind of like, no, I don't know if I could see it happening, because he's so well suited with not only the way he plays against the run, but just with what his skill set is, being as strong as he is, and as just quick in short areas as he is, that he just fits so much better in the slot.
Yeah, I think the only way Mish goes outside is if Jabbar gets hurt.
Yeah, and I even then I could see them kind of shuffling things around a little bit more to kind of keep him in the slot. Do you think that, kind of last thing here as we wrap up, if one of the three freshmen has to get on the field a significant amount going forward, kind of a la Javion Green, who do you think it is?
Well, so I don't know necessarily if this is accurate, just because every now and then PFF will miss a player's number and give him a credit for snaps that wasn't actually that player. But it looks like Leroy Bryant played against Michigan State.
I thought I did see him in there for a couple of plays.
So that's when, going back to fall camp where I stand on Leroy Bryant. That actually I think is
push your agenda. Just set an agenda.
But I do think because we've seen that Caleb Presley wasn't suited for the first couple of games. Curly Reed was, Leroy was. So I think those two guys are a little bit ahead. And I think of those two, I mean, Curly looks like a big man. I mean, he's built.
You can say beast.
But I think Leroy at this point might be just a little bit ahead, but it's going to be one of those two guys. And that's not a slight to Caleb, because I think they have different ideas for him.
I agree. And I will take the opposite side here, and I will say that it is Curly Reed. We'll see more of before Leroy Bryant, because the thing that Curly has is that body type that you just talked about. And it's something where you watch his high school film and you see somebody who has really long arms, especially when you and I are able to stand there on the sidelines before the game starts and just kind of look at him and say, yeah, I see why this guy likes to press receivers, because they just can't get around his arms, which look like they're about 10 feet long. And that's perfect for this defense. Yeah,
and also I think he's also just as capable in run defense, which I think does factor in when with this coaching staff, because that's where we saw Mish excel last season. Even when he was getting beat at times, he was able to do plenty in run coverage. So I think if you can do one or the other, that's what's going to help. And I think both those guys fit that mold.
Any final thoughts for you here?
No, I think it's a shame that Darren Barkins kind of got beat and then got hurt on the tackle after that.
He looked good in fall camp. He really did.
And I think part of that also was it didn't look like there was a single high safety over the top. So I think there was, again, much like when we said with Elijah Jackson when he got beat a couple of times, there's other factors. It's not just, wow, these guys got cooked, they're terrible. It's like, no, they're actually good. There's a reason they're playing. But there's other factors in this complex secondary scheme that factor in in the final result.
Right. Lars Hanson, as always, thank you for joining us today on Locked On Huskies. Thank you to all the everydayers for joining us as well, no matter where you listen, whether that's here on YouTube, or Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. There are so many other places where people get podcasts right now. I've lost track of them all. But wherever you are listening to this episode, please make sure you subscribe, leave a comment down below, leave us a 5-star review. If you ever have any questions, hit us up on Twitter, follow us at Locked On Huskies, at Tomashoff34, and at Lars Hanson. We do try to get back to as many of you as we possibly can, and we will talk to you all on Wednesday.